Right on. Well, welcome guys to this should be number 6 now.
Wrong. No, this is episode number 5. We miscounted our episodes, deleted a couple of audio files. Welcome to episode number 5. This works out for us, though, because we're trying to be transparent in this podcast. So here's some transparency for you. We screwed up. We're humans. Enjoy the process.
We are your hosts, Ethan and Gary. And last week we said we would be talking about the weight of sin and the severity of sin, which I think we'll get into maybe briefly. But we are short on time, seeing as my brother here has to work, and also we're short on time because this is the final week before this man gets married.
Oh, straight up,
and
bro.
moves on to his next chapter in life. So
gotta make that money.
Amen, brother.
Gotta
be able to support the family,
I was
bro.
gonna say gotta make that money just in case you make that big.
No, bro, you gotta get that house. You gotta get that mortgage for that house, for that room.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
That room.
No, but I think to start, I just wanted to hear, because you're a listener and you were very quiet amidst our conversation with Navon, and I noticed, especially after the conversation we had the night prior, where you're talking about leadership and leading from listening first and then following up with responding. So I noticed you were just kind of listening while Navon and I were talking today. So I want to hear kind of your heart and your input on the way that the Lord has shown you to be delivering truth in love and mercy with composure. It's something that I struggle with, and something that I've even brought up, I believe, in prior episodes of our time recording this podcast, where a lot of times I know what I want to say, but I don't say it with mercy, or I tend to lack mercy towards others or grace towards others. And my emotions and my pride or self-righteousness can get the best of me. And so what is your experience with it? Have you had any bad experiences where when you were younger and maybe a bit less composed when it came to your zealousness for the faith and for the word of God, that you would, just be uncomposed in your conversations? And what is the Lord showing you now with it?
So there's a verse in James, believe it's chapter 1 verse 19. It says, be slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to become angry. Remember who it was earlier that was telling me they listened to a teaching by, it was Navon actually. He was talking about listening by Keller, and I often forget the long suffering of God and that he is slow to anger. And I think the reason I bring that up first is to understand that when being slow to speak and quick to listen, I think we have to understand that we're naturally quick to speak and slow to listen. This is not to take all the time either, but I know in my prior experience with talking very much in general, when I was in elementary school, I often got either penalized or got I wouldn't shut up. And it wasn't even like I'm claiming that I have like ADHD and all these things.
You're just a narcissist, that's all.
Yeah, no, I still am. How dare you say that to me? Me of all. But just the sense of my opinion. Again, like you're saying, but it always came from this zealousness and this passion. Whatever I was talking about, I was just always excited and animated, and I wanted people to understand the way that I understood. And that didn't mean there was a hierarchy or I was like discovering this new thing. It's just I'm discovering in general. And I think now what I find is taking time to listen. I think it's also when I say I wouldn't shut up, I think I want to preface what I'm about to say with what I'm not saying. And that is, we shouldn't strive to, just shut up and listen, man. That can be profitable in the sense if, somebody's trying to carry a conversation all on their own. But as far as what I've learned, I don't understand what somebody's actually going through. I'm not them. And only the Lord has that knowledge, even beyond their knowledge of themselves. And that's kind of a deep thing to think about. I don't know myself as well as the Lord knows me as being the creator. And I think what I find is it's not just merely generosity in conversation, or even allowing somebody to do what we're doing now and verbally process something. But it's a peering in, and it's like we both have said, our narcissistic, prideful tendency to think that we have something to offer to the individual. And something that humbled me was actually a separate podcast by Paul Maxwell, 15 Directives for Reformed Pastors as it pertains to counseling traumatized men. And if you haven't listened to that, just ministry in general and just relationship in general, those distinctives are huge, I think, in the way that we should interact with people. But also, I would say that in light of that, we have to accumulate. And then we have, until the person actually clarifies, yeah, you understand what I'm going through, only then should I ever seek to speak when they ask me to speak into that situation. Now, pertaining to truth, what does the scripture say? Speaking the truth in love. Obviously, I would love to sit there and look at the context. I think that's Ephesians 4, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. But the point being, speaking the truth is necessary. That cannot be ever negated. But to speak the truth when it's time to speak the truth is the most important thing. And then, like Navon was saying earlier, the delivery comes as a result of genuine, true affection and compassion for the individual that you're speaking to. And that's why I say accumulate, because when you're being slow to speak and quick to listen, that means you're actually paying attention. And that's kind of a play on words. You're paying attention. You're investing yourself. I often used to ask people and myself, what does attention cost you? It costs you everything in that moment because you're completely zoned in and invested to attend to whatever that is. And so I think we forget that. And the biggest thing is slow to become angry, because I find especially, and I don't want to distinguish completely as if I fully understand the differences between men and women, other than just the fact that I'm a guy. So I see this in other men. I see this in other men, is all I'm trying to say, with the fact that I find when we get passionate, we are very warlike in nature. And so as a result of that, if there's anything that would deter from the focal point that we're having, we become aggressive and hostile towards that thing. Whereas being slow to speak and quick to listen and slow to become angry would give us the capacity to actually understand the truth that we're to speak and in the way that we should speak it. Because then we actually have a more, not merely objective view of the truth, but God's insight. Because right after is when you're to receive the word and plant it in your heart, to that verse in James.
Dang.
So for the wrath of God, the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God.
I feel like I've become too impatient and too self-righteous to take the time often to listen. And I want to, in my pride, be the one that's fixing a situation. And so rather than sit and listen, give my time, give my attention, invest a little bit of my heart, in all reality, into what somebody's dealing with or going through, I'd rather be calculating the answer to the problem while they're speaking, give it in response, in hopes that, if I'm being completely honest, that this is going to sound terrible, but if I'm being completely honest in my flesh, that they'll shut up, receive it, and go on their merry way with the answer to their problem. I mean, and that's just being blunt about my pride, right? And that's one of those things that I believe, like, where we see knowledge puffs up, all of a sudden I think that because I have some type of understanding, which is ultimately from the Lord, that gives me the right to not care as much. And it's just been a part of my processing. It's been a part of the processing and growth that I've experienced in this season, and I believe that even the time we've spent recording will show that. From the beginning, I think it's something that I've been mentioning, something that I've been struggling with, and a lot of it comes from just the way that I was raised. And so there are roots there that are just now being exposed with my personal growth and growing in the knowledge of God. But we're supposed to grow in the knowledge and the grace of God, the grace and the knowledge of God. And that's why I've been sitting in Proverbs a lot lately, because that was where I started. And I think what I was early on in my faith, I walked in wisdom, but it was a lot more of a kind of an ooey gooey feely wisdom, where I was very just susceptible to be turned and tossed, but yet I was also very good at feeling where people were at and receiving what they were going through. So the Lord is definitely showing me how to find the balance in that, and that's why I wanted to ask you about that, because it is something that I believe and I'm praying that I'm starting to come to, obviously not a total understanding of, but at least the beginning of the end, so to speak, where it's like now I'm actually starting to grasp it, if you will. Whereas before I was just kind of acknowledging the need for it. I think now I've entered the realm of grasping it, so I can actually walk in truth and in mercy, which is what Proverbs 3 says. Bind truth and mercy around your neck, and so finding favor and high esteem with God and man. So, yeah,
I think part of it is because you're a redhead.
Fiery, bro.
No, what I was gonna say is you're a very zealous individual, and that's something that I think I've seen and known about you, as far as us coming into contact with one another. And I think you know that I'm the same way with specific things, and obviously we laugh about the most simple things because we're just so expressive, and we're so Passionate about whatever we're talking about, which is good if it's to the right things.
Pointed, yeah.
Yes, and I think I find that the same way that you mentioned and kind of confess that your pride leads you to look at the individual and the situation that they're going through as an inconvenience. I think the same way that though I struggle with the exact same temptation, I think there's an additive too of the pride of knowledge, or the pride of somebody looking and say, wow, like Gary has this wisdom and this insight.
Looking for that response.
And it rather than speaking the truth. And what I mean is not, all right, I'm going to tell you this. I know you may not want to hear it, but I do it in love. Not even that, though that's necessary as a friend and a brother.
Yeah.
But if I'm not speaking the truth of who Christ is, and what he said pertaining to the question that you're asking.
Mm.
If I'm not doing everything in my power to be like, this is what I would be tempted to say immediately, but let's just take this second if we have it, or if not individually, and let's look at what the scripture says.
Yeah.
Because that's truth. And I should love the individual enough to sacrifice my self-idolatry so that it glorifies the Lord.
Yeah.
With his word and his wisdom.
Yeah.
My response should be, yeah, we need to depend upon God, so let's do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus, so what I've gleaned from my time today earlier in the Word and reading this resource and whatnot, those are all profitable things, but they don't convey the necessity of what Christ was doing. Christ in his exposing of sin, and when he would say, "Go and sin no more," is also the promise that in and of himself he was revealing and conveying, not only the will of the Father, but the Father himself.
Yeah.
And so the words that he was speaking to them were truth,
Yeah.
but that they were the ultimate revelation so that they knew his love.
And he was setting them free. Go and sin no
Yeah.
more. That's giving the opportunity not to sin as well.
Yep.
But they didn't have that opportunity to not before.
You shall know the truth, and it shall set you free.
Mm.
And it's not the truth liberates you from the bondage of yourself.
Yeah.
Into the love of God, and to the love of those who bear his image. This is something that I think is super timely for me too. I didn't even think about what I had said last night and earlier with Navon as far as listening, but I was being hit in that moment with the reality of I feel like the sediment in me was like all riled up, and I was just dwelling in this tension of wanting to say something funny, wanting to, even while we were trying to watch stuff, I was just clowning, I'd be like, there's a bird, and, I started to pull up my phone at one point so I could play Bird Machine, and I'm like, oh, this would be hilarious, but it's just like, I'm deterring the focus of my friends, and I was quick to speak, whether actions or words. I was seeking to be quick, as if I had what you guys needed. And the sufficiency shouldn't be in me. So that I think that's super healthy to reflect upon. And I think too, unless you have further insights, because obviously I don't know what's running through your mind right now on this. Think practically what I would say to ourselves and our audience is a sense of desire and urgency to grow in these things, I think can actually be tested today with the conversations we have, even in group settings, even if it's somebody's like, are you okay? I'm just like, yeah, I'm learning to listen. In group settings, until somebody asks me to speak, I should actually just strive to listen. Even if I'm listening to an intellectual conversation of men and brothers who are more mature than me, having the humility to be like, what's that concept? What's that word he's using?
Yeah.
Just a sense, and that's what it is. I'm finding in each of these aspects is just a sense of humility. Being true and real with yourself and knowing your limitations, but also at the same time placing yourself in such a way as to I'm not what I ought to be.
Yeah.
But this is how I learn and grow.
Positioning yourself to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Positioning yourself, and I don't want to say this as if, because you're not just supposed to go receiving, but it's almost like your investment should be greater than your desire for reward. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, I reaped the harvest because I didn't grow weary in doing what was good.
Yeah.
I think that is a far more glorious thing than in the moment I receive my reward. if I wanted to make somebody laugh and they laugh, that's my reward.
Yeah.
You know? And it's
Yeah.
like, wow. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Everything else is of the enemy.
Yeah. In our time spent investing in growing, or our time spent investing in anything, is going to be greater than any time spent reaping a harvest or reaping the reward.
Right.
Those moments are very brief, whereas the work putting in to see the harvest is much more long. It's long suffering. I would say this is kind of a tangent. I know we're short on time, but pertaining to being slow to speak and quick to listen, I found that in our age, the age that we live in of social media and technology, everybody has a voice. Everybody can pose their voice whenever they want, as quickly as they want, to whomever they want. You can literally invade somebody's personal space by sending them a message. So if you want to be quick to speak, you can very quickly speak literally into somebody's life without them even inviting you into it by sending, messages and iMessages, Facebook messages, whatever. But then also on the flip side, you can just generally be quick to speak by posting whatever you want to post whenever you want to post it. And I've found myself, that's an issue. And it feeds into our pride, and it feeds into our narcissistic mentality. Feeds into mine, that's for darn sure. Thinking that I just, at any point in time, can go toe-to-toe with somebody to challenge them or to question them. That's being quick to speak. It's coming from a place of pride. And so from listening to what you had to say, it challenged me to either A, get off of social media, or B, just stop posting so much, / quit being so quick to jump into conversations when oftentimes it's not needed. Unless it's going to be edifying or building up. Like I told you earlier today, I have a bend towards confrontation. And sadly, in my flesh, I enjoy stirring the pot, getting people. I know how to find buttons, and I can push them until they break. And that's a part of being an older brother. You figure out how people tick, you figure out how to make their ticker talk, and you figure out how to break it, basically. And so that's something I found with being on social media, specifically on Facebook, is over the last week or so, I've been speaking way too quickly. And so something that I'm going to be challenged in over the next week, specifically today, am I allowing my flesh and my pride to get what it wants through social media? I might be quiet in person, and maybe I'm posing as I'm slow to speak and quick to listen in person, but then am I getting my fix, over the internet? And so that's something that I just got challenged by. So I just wanted to let you know that, and I think that's an interesting thought to just to mull over. I mean, I know you're not really on social media. One of those things for me where, I deleted some of my other social media profiles, but I kept Facebook. Now I just need to make sure that if I'm going to stick around on it, that I'm actually using it to glorify the Lord, not to feed my flesh. So.
Indeed. Yeah. No, I think not as the authority by any means. The Lord is the authority. But the request and the exhortation of a brother and to any family who's listening. Social media, my time without it has been immensely profitable, and it's like fasting. There's times where I crave to not simply entertain something, but to jump on and see what's happening with who and whatnot. And I do get a little bit of insight from my fiance. She's still on it, so but I can tell you at the same time, the fact of not having it, I feel is more refreshing, more of a blessing. And there's honestly no way that I feel like I could sustain even worrying about it with as busy as I already am. And that's just it. You find what to prioritize when the thing that is taking priority, that may not be the right thing, is gone. For example, like food, when you do choose to fast or to abstain, and that's the concept, right? When you choose to abstain for something for the sake of something greater, because if you just negate something, then that's going to be a void there that you're going to try to fill with whatever comes along. If you don't, it's like money. If you don't put a name on it, you're just going to spend it on your pleasures. So as pertaining to appetites and desires, with this, I think it's wise to understand that, replace with something that's not only noble or virtuous, but is God-given.
Yeah.
So my exhortation is, if you think you want to, go for it. Do something like a week, and be honest. You'll still desire it, but it won't be. You'll also see the benefactors on the other side, and I think that'll be super healthy as well. Preparing for marriage and stuff like that, you find a lot of ways to challenge yourself, and one of the things has been, the way I eat, the discipline to work out regularly, the discipline to read and to learn, and the thing that you fight for in engagement, and that I imagine, because I can only imagine, in marriage, is that moment when you need to do something and you don't want to, but rather you ought to do it, so you do it. And then afterwards, it's like, even if you're like, I still, like, not like if you're bitter, you're just like, I just didn't really want to do that at all. Even if you still feel like that, you still have that sense of, but I did what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And that's all you can really ask for of yourself in that. So just, the only reason I'm bringing that up is if there's any form of desiring to grow and you're desiring to take something out, stay faithful. Don't give up in the little things, because those little things will creep.
Yeah.
And you have to reestablish that daily.
Yeah. And most of the things that we resist wanting to give up are the things we have to give up the most, because that's our flesh trying to hold on to them.
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier as well. You said you find this natural propensity to be contrary or to seek conflict. And I was like, man, that is the whole necessity of the gospel right there. I think it's the susceptibility of what we're so used to. It's that contrast that Christ talks about when he finds the disciples sleeping in the garden. Just, the Spirit's willing. Paul, I want to do good, but the flesh is weak.
Yeah.
It's going to settle for less. It's going to give in and cave in.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I think about those who are still at enmity with God.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of what Ravi Zacharias said today when he was with Ben Shapiro, talking about Joseph Stalin on his deathbed, who once was a seminary student, grew to despise and hate God. On his deathbed, gives a final shake of the fist to the heavens, lays his head back and dies. At our core, we are at conflict with God. We want to be at conflict with God. We want to be at enmity with God, and it's only because of his grace and by his Spirit that we even desire to dwell with him.
And his mercy, to not only withhold the punishment we deserve, but he also, like it says in Romans 1, it's unfortunate, but he gives them over. And that's a difficult reality, but it's also like,
it's what we want.
It's what we want, and and he doesn't withhold that reality.
That's why God doesn't send people to hell. We choose hell because hell is just eternal separation from the Father.
Captivity and bondage by sin, born in iniquity. Romans 3. There's none who seeks after God. No, not one. Praise God. Well, that concludes our time today. So grateful that you guys are able to listen and partake with us as we seek to venture the understanding of humility and the gravity of sin as it pertains to speaking the truth in love, to understanding the truth, and actually walking alongside our brothers and sisters, conveying the love of Christ to both them and a world that is at enmity with God, and as a result at enmity with us, that we might love as he is loved. So, as our brother Paul would say, seek to overcome evil with good. And with that, may grace and peace be with you.